You've been told a story your entire life. A story that says the universe is impossibly vast, endlessly mysterious, fundamentally beyond your comprehension. A story that paints you as a microscopic speck drifting in an ocean of stars, a temporary accident in a cold and indifferent cosmos. But what if I told you that narrative is only a fraction of the truth? What if that's barely 5% of the real picture? Because here's something most people never fully absorb. Roughly 70% of everything that exists, every galaxy spinning in the dark, every atom forming your body, every thought that has ever flickered through your mind, is made of something scientists cannot see, cannot touch, and cannot directly detect. They call it dark energy, and here's where this stops being abstract and starts being personal. Your consciousness, the very awareness reading these words right now, might be the missing key to understanding it. Stay with me. Let me ask you something honest. Have you ever looked at your life and thought, on paper, this should be enough? The career is stable. The relationships are intact. The comfort is there. From the outside, it all looks fine. And yet beneath the surface, there's this quiet emptiness, a subtle ache, a persistent whisper that says something deeper is missing. Like you're brushing against the surface of reality but never quite breaking through it. If you felt that, you are not alone. And more importantly, you are not broken. What you're experiencing is what I call the materialist crisis. We've been conditioned to believe that reality is nothing more than atoms colliding with atoms. That consciousness is just neurons firing in a biological machine. That meaning itself is a comforting illusion, something we invented to survive in a universe that doesn't care. But here's what rarely gets said out loud. That worldview isn't just emotionally unsatisfying, it's scientifically incomplete. The very science that once reduced you to a biochemical accident is now uncovering something astonishing. Something that doesn't just tweak the edges of our understanding, it shatters the frame entirely. Quantum physicists, the researchers who study reality at its most fundamental level, are uncovering evidence that consciousness may not be separate from the universe at all. It may be woven directly into the fabric of existence, and that 70% of the cosmos that science cannot explain, that vast ocean of dark energy. It may be the bridge between the material world you can touch and the inner awareness you experience every single day. So are you ready to go deeper? Because what we're about to explore will change how you see yourself, your potential, and your place in the cosmos. Now here's where it gets truly fascinating. In 1915, Albert Einstein published his theory of general relativity, one of the most elegant and revolutionary descriptions of gravity ever conceived. According to Einstein, space and time are not separate backdrops where events happen. They are interwoven into a single fabric, space-time, and massive objects bend and curve that fabric. Planets orbit stars not because they are pulled by invisible strings, but because they follow the curves in space-time itself. It was beautiful, it was radical, it was profound. But there was a problem. When Einstein applied his equations to the universe as a whole, they produced a disturbing prediction. The universe could not remain static. It had to either expand or contract. And at that time, most scientists, including Einstein, believed the universe was eternal and unchanging. So Einstein did something extraordinary. He modified his own equations. He inserted an additional term, a cosmological constant, a kind of anti-gravity force designed to hold the universe steady. A mathematical adjustment to preserve the belief in a static cosmos. Years later, he would reportedly call this move his biggest blunder, because 13 years after his groundbreaking theory, astronomer Edwin Hubble peered through a telescope and made a discovery that changed everything. The universe was not static, it was expanding. Galaxies were racing away from each other at staggering speeds. Einstein's equations had been right all along. The universe was dynamic, alive with motion. The cosmological constant seemed unnecessary, or so it appeared. Fast forward to 1998. Two independent teams of astronomers began studying distant supernovae, exploding stars that act like cosmic lighthouses across unimaginable distances. Their goal was simple: measure how much the expansion of the universe was slowing down under the pull of gravity. But what they discovered stunned them. The expansion wasn't slowing down. It was accelerating. The universe was not just expanding, It was expanding faster and faster over time. Something invisible was pushing space itself outward. Some unknown force was permeating the entire cosmos, driving galaxies apart with increasing intensity. In that moment, Einstein's discarded cosmological constant returned from exile. But now it had a new name: dark energy. When physicists calculated how much of this mysterious force filled the universe, the result was staggering. Approximately 70% of the entire cosmos is made of this invisible, unexplained energy. 7 out of every 10 parts of reality are composed of something we cannot directly detect or fully comprehend. Let that sink in. Everything you have ever known, every star lighting the night sky, every planet orbiting in silence, every human being who has ever loved, struggled, dreamed, or existed, is made of what scientists call ordinary matter. And ordinary matter accounts for only about 5% of the universe. 5%. Another 25% is dark matter, invisible material that exerts gravitational pull but does not interact with light. And then there is the 70%, dark energy. The most mysterious component of existence. You are living inside a universe that is 95% invisible. Now pause with that, because this is where it becomes deeply personal. If the cosmos you inhabit is overwhelmingly mystery, overwhelmingly unseen potential, what does that imply about you? About the consciousness experiencing it? When you first encounter these numbers, there are typically 2 reactions. The first is despair, a sense of insignificance. A feeling that you are nothing, a fleeting biological accident in an incomprehensibly vast system. When you consider that the Milky Way alone contains hundreds of billions of stars, and that there may be trillions of galaxies scattered across the observable universe, it's easy to feel small. But here's the paradox no one talks about. That feeling of smallness is rooted in a misunderstanding of what you are. You've been trained to think of yourself as a separate object. A cluster of atoms moving through empty space. A biological machine observing a universe that exists independently of you. Yet quantum physics is revealing something profoundly different. You are not separate from the universe. You are an expression of it. Your consciousness is not an outsider looking in. It may be woven directly into the very fabric of reality. Consider what physicists call the observer effect. In the quantum realm, the domain of atoms and subatomic particles, entities do not behave like solid objects. They exist in what is known as superposition. Instead of being in one definite state, they exist as waves of probability, spread across multiple possibilities at once. But the moment a measurement occurs, the moment an observation is made, that wave of probability collapses into a single definite outcome. And here is where things become controversial. Some of the most respected thinkers in modern physics, including Eugene Wigner, Roger Penrose, and Andre Linde, have suggested that consciousness itself may play a role in this collapse. That observation is not merely passive witnessing, it is active participation. Wigner once stated that it is not possible to formulate the laws of quantum mechanics in a fully consistent way without reference to consciousness. Think about the implications. If consciousness is required to transform quantum possibilities into concrete realities, then you are not merely watching the universe unfold. You are participating in its unfolding, moment by moment. Choice by choice, you are the universe becoming aware of itself. And suddenly that 70% mystery, that dark energy stretching space-time apart, begins to look less like an unsolved problem and more like an open invitation. An invitation to explore the invisible dimensions of existence, the domains that science can measure mathematically but cannot yet explain experientially. The space where consciousness and cosmos may be intertwined in ways we are only beginning to grasp. So let me ask you something directly. Where in your life have you been shrinking because you believed you were insignificant? Where have you dimmed your brilliance because you assumed you were separate from the greater whole? What if that assumption is false? Hold that question gently in your mind, because we are only at the beginning. And what comes next, when we start talking about black holes, will take this mystery even further. Now let's move into territory that is even stranger than expanding galaxies and invisible energy. If you want to understand how deep this mystery goes, we have to talk about the most extreme objects ever discovered in the cosmos: black holes. A black hole forms when a massive star, at least 8 times heavier than our own sun, reaches the end of its life. For millions of years, that star balances 2 forces: gravity pulling inward and nuclear fusion pushing outward. But when the fuel runs out, the outward pressure disappears. Gravity wins. And the collapse that follows is not gentle. The star doesn't simply shrink. It implodes past every known form of resistance. The core compresses beyond imagination, crushing matter into a point of infinite density known as a singularity. Around that singularity forms a boundary called the event horizon, a threshold in spacetime where gravity becomes so intense that nothing can escape. Not matter, not radiation, not even light. Cross that boundary and according to classical physics, you are gone forever. Or at least that's what we once believed. In the 1970s, Stephen Hawking made a discovery that shocked the scientific world. Black holes are not completely black. When quantum effects are taken into account near the event horizon, black holes emit a faint glow, now known as Hawking radiation. It's incredibly weak, but it's real. And over unimaginable spans of time, trillions upon trillions of years, this radiation causes black holes to slowly lose mass. They evaporate, they disappear, and here is where the paradox emerges. If a black hole swallows information, every particle, every quantum state, every bit of data describing everything that fell inside, and then eventually evaporates, what happens to that information? According to quantum mechanics, information cannot be destroyed. This isn't a philosophical preference. It's a foundational principle of the theory. The equations demand conservation. The universe, in some deep sense, keeps the record. But if the black hole vanishes completely, it appears that the information vanishes with it. This contradiction is known as the black hole information paradox, and it is one of the deepest unresolved problems in modern physics. Now here's where it becomes truly wild. Some physicists, including Leonard Susskind, have proposed a radical solution. The information does not disappear into oblivion. Instead, it becomes encoded on the surface of the event horizon itself. Like a hologram, every particle that falls into a black hole leaves an imprint on its boundary. The 3-dimensional contents are described by a 2-dimensional surface. And as the black hole slowly evaporates through Hawking radiation, that encoded information is gradually released back into the universe. Nothing is ever truly lost. Pause with that. If the universe preserves information even under the most extreme conditions imaginable, even inside the crushing gravity of a black hole, what might that imply about you, about your memories, your experiences, your consciousness? What if nothing you have ever thought, felt, or lived is ever completely erased? What if every moment of awareness leaves a trace woven into the deeper structure of reality? This is not mystical poetry. This is the direction in which cutting-edge theoretical physics is pointing. And it becomes even stranger. Some interpretations suggest that when matter and information collapse into a black hole, they might seed a new universe on the other side, a branching reality disconnected from our own. A cosmic rebirth, a parallel expansion, infinite universes, infinite possibilities, and suddenly the question shifts. It's no longer just what happens to information in a black hole. It becomes what happens to consciousness when it encounters the ultimate boundary of reality. Are you ready to go deeper? Because now we return to something that sounds simple but changes everything: the observer effect. Here's what you must understand about quantum mechanics. At the smallest scales, atoms, electrons, photons, reality does not behave the way your everyday intuition expects. Particles do not possess definite positions or properties until they are measured. Instead, they exist in a cloud of probability, multiple potential states at once. This is not speculative philosophy. It has been confirmed experimentally again and again. The famous double-slit experiment demonstrates it with breathtaking clarity. Fire a single photon toward 2 slits. Before measurement, it behaves like a wave, passing through both slits simultaneously and creating an interference pattern on the screen behind them. It acts as though it explores all possible paths at once. But the moment you measure which slit it travels through, the wave collapses. The photon behaves like a particle. It chooses one definite path, The act of observation alters the outcome. Observation changes reality. Most physicists interpret this as a technical feature of measurement. The act of interacting with the system disturbs it. Nothing mystical, nothing metaphysical. But not everyone was satisfied with that explanation. Eugene Wigner argued that consciousness itself may be necessary to collapse the wave function. That without an observer, reality remains suspended in sewer position. Roger Penrose, along with Stuart Hameroff, proposed that consciousness might arise from quantum processes inside the brain. That awareness itself could be tied to quantum events unfolding within neural structures. And Andre Lind suggested something even more radical, that the universe may not be able to meaningfully exist without observers, that consciousness and cosmos participate in each other's existence. Now let's be grounded here. These ideas are controversial. The majority of physicists do not endorse the consciousness-based interpretation of quantum mechanics. But here's the crucial point. No interpretation has definitively solved the measurement problem. Quantum mechanics works with astonishing precision. Its equations predict experimental outcomes more accurately than any other theory in science. Yet what it actually means, what truly happens when the wave function collapses, remains unknown. And in that uncertainty, in that gap between equation and explanation, there is a space where science and spirituality begin to touch. Consider this carefully. You are a conscious observer inside a quantum universe. Every moment your attention lands somewhere, on a thought, a memory, a fear, a possibility. In the language of quantum mechanics, attention resembles measurement. Focus resembles observation. What if ancient teachings about attention shaping reality were not primitive superstition, but intuitive glimpses of a deeper truth? Not because subatomic particles respond to your wishes like obedient servants, but because you are not separate from the field in which they arise. You are the field, aware of itself. When your consciousness, your focus, your emotional state, and your belief align with a particular possibility, you are not forcing the universe to comply. You are becoming coherent with a specific outcome. You are participating in the selection of probabilities. This is where manifestation is often misunderstood. It is not about bending reality through egoic demand. The quantum field does not respond to force. It responds to coherence, to alignment, to the observer embodying the state they seek. So let me ask you directly, what kind of reality are you collapsing into form right now with the quality of your attention? What possibilities are you reinforcing moment by moment through fear, doubt, focus, or belief? Because we are about to uncover the deepest layer yet. For decades, we were told that science and spirituality occupy separate territories. Science deals with objective facts. Spirituality deals with subjective experience. They were portrayed as incompatible, as if they spoke entirely different languages. But quantum mechanics shattered that wall. Some of the most respected physicists of the 20th century began saying things that sounded less like strict materialism and more like philosophical astonishment. Eugene Wigner stated that it is not possible to formulate quantum mechanics in a fully consistent way without reference to consciousness. John Archibald Wheeler suggested that we are participators in bringing into being not only what is near and present, but what is distant and past. Freeman Dyson reflected that the more he studied the architecture of the universe, the more it appeared as though the universe somehow knew we were coming. Let that idea settle. Not destiny in a simplistic sense, not divine scripting, but the possibility that consciousness and cosmos are two aspects of a single underlying reality. Here is the radical implication. You are not living inside a dead, mechanical universe that exists independently of you. You are living inside a participatory cosmos, a reality that responds at some fundamental level, to observation, to attention, to awareness. And that 70% mystery, that dark energy driving cosmic acceleration, may not be identical to consciousness, but both reside in the invisible majority of reality. Both are measurable yet unexplained. Both point toward dimensions of existence that defy reduction to simple mechanical parts. Now turn inward for a moment. You know beyond theory that you are conscious. You experience awareness directly. You can direct your focus. You can form intention. You can observe your own thoughts. And yet materialist science still cannot explain why consciousness exists at all. Not how neurons fire, not which regions activate, but why there is subjective experience in the first place. That question remains open, and in that openness, the deepest mystery of the universe is not out there among the galaxies. It is here, aware, looking back at itself. Neural correlates of consciousness. Of course, we can scan the brain. We can identify regions that light up when you see a color, recall a memory, fall in love, feel fear. We can measure electrical activity, chemical signaling, synchronized oscillations. All of that is real. All of that is valuable. But none of that explains the experience itself. It does not explain the redness of red, the taste of sweetness, the ache of heartbreak, the warmth of love, the simple, undeniable sensation of being you here now aware. Science can map the brain activity associated with awareness, but it cannot explain why awareness exists at all. This is what philosophers call the hard problem of consciousness. And it stands as one of the most profound mysteries in modern thought. In many ways, it is just as baffling as dark energy. We can measure its effects, we can observe correlations. But the essence remains untouched, so here is a stunning possibility. What if the reason consciousness cannot be explained in terms of physical processes is not because we are missing a piece of the puzzle, but because we are asking the wrong question? What if consciousness is not something produced by matter? What if it is not a byproduct of neurons firing? What if consciousness is a fundamental feature of reality itself? What if you are not a body that happens to have consciousness, but consciousness having a bodily experience? Let that inversion settle into you. If that is even partially true, if you are the universe observing itself, if your awareness is participating in the collapse of quantum possibilities into definite realities moment by moment, then you are not powerless. You are not insignificant. You are not a passive accident drifting in cosmic emptiness. You are an active participant in existence. Every thought you think, every emotion you generate, every focus of attention you sustain. You are shaping reality, not someday, not after you become enlightened, not after you prove yourself worthy, right now. So the question becomes unavoidable. What reality are you creating? Let's bring everything together. We began with a number, 70%, the portion of the universe made of dark energy. A force we can detect mathematically, but cannot explain conceptually. We explored black holes, objects so dense that not even light can escape, and yet even they appear unable to destroy information. Everything leaves a trace. Nothing is truly erased. We examined the observer effect, the strange and experimentally verified fact that observation collapses quantum possibilities into specific outcomes. And we arrived at a radical but increasingly discussed proposition. Consciousness may not be separate from the cosmos. You may be the universe experiencing itself through a localized perspective. Now this is where it stops being abstract philosophy and becomes practical. Most people approach life from separation. They believe they are isolated individuals in a vast, indifferent universe. They believe reality is something external that must be manipulated, controlled, forced into submission. So they hustle, they strain, they push. They try to bend circumstances to match their desires. And when manifestation doesn't work, when the law of attraction feels hollow or inconsistent, they assume they failed. But here is what they are missing. You cannot manipulate a universe you are fundamentally part of. You cannot force a field that you are woven into. What you can do is align. When you understand that you are not separate from the quantum field, that you are an expression of it, manifestation stops being about acquisition. It becomes about embodiment. You do not attract wealth. You embody the vibration of abundance. You do not manifest love. You embody the frequency of connection. You do not create success. You align with the timeline in which you are already successful. This is what mystics have been pointing toward for thousands of years, and it is what quantum physics suggests through its mathematics. Reality is not fixed and predetermined in the classical sense. It is probabilistic. Multiple potentials coexist. And the observer, your consciousness, plays a role in determining which potential becomes your lived experience. Not through wishful thinking, not through vision boards alone, but through coherence. Through alignment, through becoming in your internal state what you seek in your external reality. Let me give you something tangible. Imagine you want to manifest a new career. Most people approach this from lack. I don't have it, I need it, I must get it. But the quantum field does not respond to lack, it responds to resonance. So instead of asking, how do I get this career? You ask a different question. Who is the version of me already living that reality? How do they think? How do they carry themselves? What decisions do they make? What beliefs do they hold? And then you begin to embody that, not as pretending, but as remembering. Because in a probabilistic universe, all possibilities exist as real configurations of potential. The version of you living your dream life is not a fantasy floating in the future. It is a probability branch within the quantum landscape. When you align your thoughts, emotions, and actions with that branch, you are collapsing the wave function in that direction. You are not creating something from nothing. You are selecting from infinite possibilities, and manifestation becomes elegant, natural, almost effortless. But now we arrive at a paradox so profound it stretches the imagination. What if every choice you make literally creates a new universe? Not metaphorically, literally. In 1957, physicist Hugh Everett proposed what is now known as the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. According to this theory, the wave function never actually collapses. Instead, every possible outcome of a quantum event occurs, but in different branches of reality. The universe does not choose one outcome, it splits, again and again. Every quantum interaction generates a branching structure of parallel realities. In one branch, a particle spins up. In another, it spins down. In one timeline, you made a certain decision. In another, you chose differently. Infinite versions of you, infinite timelines, all existing simultaneously within a vast multiverse. I know what that sounds like. Science fiction, fantasy. But the mathematics behind the many worlds interpretation is consistent with the equations of quantum mechanics. It resolves certain paradoxes without requiring wave function collapse. And while it remains controversial, it is taken seriously within theoretical physics. So let's entertain the possibility. If every possible version of events exists somewhere in the multiverse, then the version of you living your dream life is not hypothetical. It is real in another branch of the universal wave function. The question then shifts. It is no longer, can I create that reality? It becomes, how do I align with that timeline? If consciousness plays a role in selecting experienced reality, if attention corresponds to the branch you inhabit, then you are not manufacturing new universes. You are navigating among existing ones. Every choice, every sustained focus, every emotional shift you are selecting. You are, in a sense, quantum jumping, not through magic, but through alignment with a different probability structure. This reframes manifestation entirely. You are not pulling something into your world. You are shifting your consciousness to the version of reality where that outcome already exists. Think back to a moment when your life changed suddenly. When a door opened unexpectedly. When coincidences stacked in your favor. When everything seemed to align at once. What if that was not random luck? What if you shifted branches, not intentionally? Not consciously, but through a change in your state, through a shift in belief, emotion, identity, you aligned with a different timeline. If that can happen unconsciously, imagine what becomes possible when it happens deliberately. When you realize that infinite versions of you already exist. When you understand that you are not locked into one predetermined path. When you recognize that your consciousness is the navigator moving through a landscape of probabilities. You stop trying to wrestle your current circumstances into submission. You stop fighting the reflection. And you begin shifting the source, your state of being, knowing that reality will reorganize around it. You stop fighting your current circumstances. You stop trying to bend reality through force. Instead, you begin aligning with the version of reality where the shift has already occurred. You become a timeline shifter. And suddenly that 70% mystery, that vast ocean of dark energy, no longer feels like an abstract cosmic statistic. It becomes your playground. So let me ask you directly, are you ready to explore which timeline you're choosing? There's a statement from Freeman Dyson that completely stopped me in my tracks. He said, the more I examine the universe and study the details of its architecture, the more evidence I find that the universe in some sense must have known we were coming. That is not poetic exaggeration. That is a physicist reflecting on the fine-tuning of the cosmos. Consider the fundamental constants of nature, the strength of gravity, the electromagnetic force, the charge of the electron, the mass of the proton. If any of these values were even slightly different, and we're talking about fractions of a percent, the universe would be sterile. No stable stars, no complex chemistry, no carbon, no planets, no biology, no observers. The universe appears exquisitely calibrated for consciousness to emerge, and Dyson went further. He suggested that any theory about the origin and fate of the universe is incomplete if it treats life and consciousness as accidental side effects. They may not be afterthoughts. They may be essential features of the cosmic story. Think about what that implies. Yes, dark energy is accelerating cosmic expansion. In about 5 billion years, our sun will exhaust its fuel. In trillions of years, the last stars will fade. The universe, according to standard cosmology, trends toward cold darkness. But is that the full picture? What if consciousness plays a role we do not yet understand? What if observers, beings like us, and perhaps far more advanced forms of awareness, influence the evolution of the cosmos in subtle ways? I am not saying we control dark energy. I am saying the relationship between consciousness and cosmos may be deeper than our current models reveal. Quantum mechanics already shows that observation affects outcome. The observer effect is not optional, it is built into the mathematics. And if that principle operates at the quantum scale, what happens when billions of conscious observers are collapsing probabilities simultaneously? Across a planet, across a galaxy, across civilizations, what happens when consciousness becomes cosmic in scope? Here's the paradox that changes everything. You are both insignificant and essential. Insignificant in the sense that you are a tiny fragment within an incomprehensibly vast cosmos. Essential in the sense that without observers, reality at the quantum level may remain in superposition, unactualized, undefined. You are the universe waking up to itself. Every time you become aware of a thought, a sensation, a truth, you are participating in cosmic self-realization. And that 70% mystery, that dark energy we cannot yet explain, may be the canvas. The infinite field of potential waiting to be shaped by observation. You are not separate from it. You are immersed in it. You are swimming in an ocean of invisible potential every moment of your existence. And when you align your consciousness, when you refine your focus, elevate your emotion, clarify your intention, you are not merely changing personal circumstances. You are participating in the evolution of the cosmos itself. Every thought carries weight. Every choice ripples outward. Every shift in awareness sends subtle waves through the quantum field. You are cosmically significant, not because you are superior, but because you are an irreplaceable expression of the universe experiencing itself. Now let's bring this down from the cosmic to the practical. How do you actually live this? First, stop operating from separation. Every time you think, I need to get something out there, you reinforce the illusion that reality is external and you are isolated from it. Instead, ask a different question. What version of me already embodies this? How does that version think? How do they feel? How do they show up in the world? Then begin embodying that state, not as performance, but as alignment. Second, recognize that your attention is sacred. Wherever you place your focus, you place your creative power. If your attention is constantly locked onto fear, scarcity, comparison, and lack, you are reinforcing those probability branches. Not because the universe punishes you, but because observation participates in selection. So become intentional. Choose what you dwell on. Choose what narratives you energize. Choose the quality of your awareness. Third, understand that emotion is the language of the quantum field. Thought alone is not enough. Visualization without feeling is incomplete. When you imagine the reality you desire, do not just see it, feel it. Embody gratitude, embody certainty, embody joy. These are not decorative emotions. They are coherent states that align you with specific probability pathways. Fourth, release force. The quantum field does not respond to hustling or desperation. It responds to coherence and alignment followed by inspired action. Trust the intelligence woven into reality. Your role is not to micromanage every detail. Your role is to align and then move when the signal appears. And finally, remember this. You are not doing this alone. You are not an isolated individual attempting to bend existence to your will. You are a wave within an ocean of consciousness, part of a continuous dance between observer and observed. When you shift, the field shifts. When you align, the field responds. That is manifestation in its truest sense, not control, not domination, but co-creation. So here is my question for you. What reality have you been trying to force into existence? What if you stopped forcing and started aligning? What if the version of you living your dream life already exists within the vast branching structure described by Hugh Everett, and your task is not to create it from nothing, but to become its vibrational match? What if it is simpler than you imagined? And what if it begins right now with this breath, this choice, this moment of awareness? Are you ready to step into that timeline? We have covered extraordinary ground. 70% of the universe is dark energy, measurable, yet unexplained. Black holes appear to preserve information even under extreme conditions. The observer effect suggests consciousness participates in collapsing quantum possibilities. The many worlds framework implies that infinite versions of you may already exist across branching realities. But here is what matters most. You are not insignificant. You are not separate. You are not powerless. You are the universe observing itself, a localized point of awareness through which infinite potential becomes lived experience. And every moment you are choosing. Every moment you are aligning with a branch, a trajectory, a version of reality. The quantum field does not respond to your words, it responds to your state of being. So pause, take a breath, and ask yourself honestly, who am I becoming right now? Not tomorrow, not when circumstances improve, not when conditions are perfect. Right now, because now is the only place timelines shift. If something in this exploration resonated, if you felt recognition rather than persuasion, hold on to that. Follow it. Stay curious about it. This is Observer Effect, episode 32. And in the next chapter, we go back to the very beginning, to the origin of everything, and examine why the probability of your existence is so astronomically small that some scientists describe it as miraculous. But here is the deeper question. What if it was never luck? What if the universe has always been in conversation with consciousness? Until next time, remember, the field is listening. And you are the one collapsing the next wave.